During Governor Newsom's visit to the Valley on Wednesday, he was hopeful a $6 billion school reopening deal would get done by the end of the week. So far, no deal. The state wants to get K through second grade students back to the classrooms. The California Teachers Association has demanded state leaders ensure teachers and support staff are vaccinated before allowing them back into campuses. So San Francisco has sued their school district to reopen. Parents have sued the state to reopen schools. And now mayors, including our very own Mayor Jerry Dyer, has signed on to a letter to put elementary educators in front of the vaccine line. So let's bring our panel back in to discuss. Laurel Rosenhall and Ralph Vartabedian. Laurel, I'll begin with you here. Should Governor Newsom start prioritizing teachers as most of the public schools statewide have continued to be distance learning for almost a year now? Should they get into that front of the line?
So this is part of what's really confusing about the way California is organizing these vaccine priority tiers. Teachers actually are in the same tier as everyone who is 65 and older. The problem is that there's just so many people in that tier when you include everyone who's 65 and older, plus teachers, plus a couple of other essential workers like food workers, farm workers, and grocery workers. They're all in the same tier, and there's just not enough shots to inoculate everyone who's in that tier. And so what's happening is individual counties are deciding within that tier who should be first and who should be second. And so exactly how it's playing out with teachers really is varied around the state. There are some counties where they've already begun giving the vaccination to teachers. And there are other counties where they've decided they're going to do 65 and up first and then teachers later. So it's a little confusing because there is the state ranking and then counties have options within that. And so exactly how it's playing out for teachers is different in different parts of California. Well, what Governor Newsom has said is that he doesn't think vaccinations should be a requirement for schools to reopen. He thinks that schools can reopen safely even if teachers are not all vaccinated. And that's causing a lot of friction with the teachers union because they're saying they don't want to be required to go back to school until they've had the opportunity to have the vaccine.
So let me make it more confusing for everyone here, because guess what's happening in Fresno County? While the state says 65 and up, and Ralph, you even mentioned that, guess what? Fresno County is saying 75 and up because we don't have enough doses to get to the 65 and up. So where do you stand on this, Ralph? Where do you see it happening? And are teachers even in the Los Angeles, Orange County area starting to get the vaccine?
I think when you ask the question, should teachers and other frontline workers be prioritized, right? You have to go back to the rationale for inoculating all the 65-year-olds. And that wasn't based on your exposure risk. It was based on your fatality risk, right? And the state wanted to organize this to minimize fatalities. It would be, I think, the state would really have to reverse course on that and say, no, this should be prioritized based on exposure risk, not fatality risk. And you might very well get higher rates of fatalities, but you would prevent more illness and perhaps open up more of the economy if you did otherwise. And that's the issue that that's a third rail that no politician wants to cut.
And you know what? Newsom has been tap dancing all over the place. I think we can agree to all of that. And I want to move on to a place that is opening up, vaccination or not, and that is churches. They're reopening across the state for in-person services. That is because last Friday night, late night, the High Court rejecting Newsom's closing them down in the restrictive tier, which is the purple tier. And so in that ruling, I want to share with everybody, Neil Gorsuch said, quote, if Hollywood may host a studio audience or film a singing competition, while not a single soul may enter California's churches, synagogues, and mosques, something has gone seriously awry. So, Ralph, I'll start with you. A couple minutes here just to really touch on this. Is this an indictment on how Newsom has handled the pandemic?
Well, he's bringing a certain set of beliefs to it that he probably accepts, and that others accept. But I think for the churches, they don't view those services as an entertainment, venue. They think it's actually something real that you get when you go to church, that you're actually doing something concrete and explicit and real. So there's a real kind of disconnect here between the policymakers and the religious establishment about what the value of going to church is. Is it symbolic? I don't think a lot of deeply religious people think it's symbolic. They think going to church, actually, they walk away with something concrete and explicit.
And Laurel, I want you to kind of finish up there. Is this a big blow to Newsom?
I don't think it is, because the ruling is actually kind of a split ruling. Yes, they said that it's that California's outright ban on indoor worship does not, cannot stand, is not constitutional. However, they approved of a lot of the limitations that Newsom put in place, including restricting it to only 25% of capacity for the space that the church has, and including the ban on chanting and singing, which seems like a surprising decision given the First Amendment freedoms that go hand in hand with worshiping. So it's a split ruling, and it's the first of these lawsuits that California has lost. There have been numerous lawsuits against the pandemic era restrictions that Newsom put in place, and most of them are still pending. We can't say the outcome, but a few the state has won, and this one it lost.
Yeah.
So I think that it's all part of the mix.
Well, two of the finest journalists in the state, Ralph Vartabedian, Laurel Rosenhall. Hey, we appreciate your time here on Sunday Morning Matters.